September 28, 2008. The source of D-Dub's Cave, France. In the heart of France's rugged landscape, where the cold waters of Montrouge springs carve through the earth, three daring souls embarked on an exploration destined to etch their names into the annals of cave diving history, but not in the way they had hoped. John Manili, born in 1976, was a man whose life was a tapestry of bold adventures, from the thrill of motorcycling to the depths of scuba diving, and he stood at the precipice of his latest challenge. Alongside his trusted friends, John Bonin and Charles Reed Henry, Manili was about to dive into a world where light fears to tread in the source of D-Dub's Cave, a subterranean marvel notorious for its unforgiving nature. This is the story of the John Manili incident, a tale of adventure, ambition, and a sobering reminder of nature's unforgiving power. John Manili's story began in 1976. From a young age, he was the kind of guy who always sought the thrill of the ride and the rush of the deep. Motorcycling wasn't just a hobby for John, it was a way of life. The roar of the engine and the blur of the landscape rushing by were where he found his freedom. It was on these rides, with the wind against his face, that John felt most alive. But the thrill of motorcycling was only one part of John's adventurous spirit. His other passion lay in the mysterious and serene world beneath the waves. Scuba diving was not just a pastime, it was a journey into a different world. John's diving adventures eventually led him to join the British Sub-Aqua Club, BSAC, in Brighton. The BSAC was more than just a club. It was a community of like-minded enthusiasts who shared his love for the underwater world. Here, John's diving skills flourished. He learned the nuances of advanced diving and became proficient in using a rebreather, a sophisticated piece of equipment that recycles exhaled air, removes carbon dioxide, and adds oxygen. This allowed him to stay underwater for longer periods, exploring the depths in a way he couldn't before. But John's life took a dramatic turn due to a motorcycle accident. The accident left him with a severe back injury, a reminder of his mortality and the risks that came with his passions. This injury didn't just scar him physically, it imposed limitations that he had never experienced before. John, who had always pushed the boundaries of adventure, now found himself constrained. Despite the physical challenges, John's spirit remained unbroken. His determination to continue exploring never wavered. It was this resilience that led him to the world of cave diving. Cave diving was different from anything John had done before. It was not just about the beauty and serenity of the underwater world. It was about venturing into the unknown, navigating through tight spaces where every move mattered. John knew that cave diving, especially with his physical limitations, was a risk. But for him, the allure of the unknown was irresistible. He was drawn to the challenge and the thrill of discovering what lay within the Earth's dark, hidden chambers. His back injury was a constant reminder of his vulnerability, yet it also fueled his determination to prove that he could overcome any obstacle. As he prepared for the dive into the source of D-Dub's Cave, John was aware of the risks, but his passion for adventure, the call of the unexplored, was too strong to ignore. He was ready to embark on what he hoped would be another exhilarating chapter in his life's adventure. After getting to know John Manili and his undying passion for diving, let's turn our attention to the main stage of our story, the source of D-Dub's Cave. Nestled in the rugged terrain of France, this cave wasn't just any dive site. It was a legend in the diving community. A place of beauty and danger, it called to the brave and the bold. The source of D-Dub's Cave was known for its crystal-clear waters that could deceive you into thinking it was less dangerous than it really was. But seasoned divers knew better. The cave was a maze of underwater passages, each with its own set of challenges. The narrow, winding tunnels could suddenly open into vast chambers, only to shrink back into tight, almost impassable spaces. These unpredictable shifts made the cave both a diver's dream and a potential nightmare. Diving in D-Dub's was like entering another world. Once you descended, the surface and all its comforts were a world away. The deeper you went, the more the cave seemed to close in on you. In some places, the passages were so tight that divers had to remove their gear just to squeeze through. It was not a place for the faint-hearted or the inexperienced. The cave had been a site of many explorations, with divers drawn to its depths in search of adventure and discovery. Among them was John Valenthin, a name synonymous with the pinnacle of cave exploration and rescue. Valanthan wasn't just a diver, he was a legend, holding a world record for his explorations and playing a crucial role in the famous 2018 Tom Luong cave rescue. His exploits in D-dubs had added new chapters to the cave's already rich history. In 2007, he made a landmark dive, navigating its depths and overcoming formidable obstacles to lay down significant exploration lines. Others followed in his wake, each adding to the knowledge of the cave and pushing its boundaries further. Andre Glor and Pedro Bardi, for instance, ventured into D-dubs a year after Valanthan, marking a new line and reaching a remarkable depth. Their efforts, along with those of successive divers, extended the known limits of the cave, turning it into a place where records were made and sometimes, tragically, lives were lost. The source of D-dubs was not just a cave, it was a testament to human curiosity and the relentless pursuit of the unknown. Its icy waters and complex layout represented the ultimate challenge to divers like John Manili. It was a siren call that was hard to resist, promising adventure and testing the limits of those who dared to explore its depths. As John Manili and his friends prepared to dive into the source of D-dub's cave, they were fully aware of the cave's reputation. They knew the challenges they would face and the dangers that lurked in the shadowy depths. But for them, the call of the unknown was too strong to ignore. They were ready to write their own chapter in the history of this legendary cave. This brings us to the day of the fateful expedition. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon as John Manili and his friends, John Bonin and Charles Reed Henry, gathered to prepare for their dive into the source of D-dub's cave. There was an air of excitement mixed with a hint of nervous anticipation as they laid out their gear, each piece a familiar friend in the daunting world of cave diving. John's equipment was a testament to his experience and ambition. His rebreather was a state-of-the-art piece of kit designed to allow him to breathe longer underwater by recycling his exhaled air. It was a remarkable tool, but in the tight confines of the cave, it was also a bulky companion. This wasn't just any dive. They were about to navigate through some of the most challenging underwater passages known to divers. As they checked and double-checked their gear, John Bonin and Charles Reed Henry couldn't help but voice their concerns. They knew John's capabilities, but they also knew the cave's unforgiving nature. "John, that rebreather of yours, it's too big for some of the narrow passages we'll be hitting," Bonin pointed out, his brow furrowed with worry. "And with your back and all, it's going to be a tough squeeze," added Henry, his tone echoing the concern in his eyes. Manili knew his friends were right, but the fire of adventure burned too strongly within him to back down now. "I've handled tight spots before, and I'll handle them again," he replied, his voice a mix of confidence and stubborn determination. "We've trained for this, and I'm not about to let my gear or anything else hold me back." Bonin and Henry exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. They knew Manili well enough to understand that once he set his mind to something, there was no changing it. They admired his courage, even as they worried about his recklessness. As they donned their wetsuits and checked their air tanks one last time, the mood was one of resolve, tinged with apprehension. They were about to embark on a journey that would test their skills, their friendship, and their luck. The cave awaited them, a silent challenge beneath the calm surface of the water. Each of them knew the risks, but the thrill of the unknown, the call of the unexplored depths of the source of D-dub's cave, was an irresistible siren song. They were ready to face whatever lay ahead together. With their gear ready and their resolve set, John Manili, John Bonin, and Charles Reed Henry stepped into the cool waters of the source of D-dub's cave. The early morning light shimmered on the surface, giving no hint of the labyrinth that lay beneath. The silent, eerie beauty of the underwater cave took its place as they submerged, fading away from the world above. The first part of the dive was familiar territory for the trio. The entrance to the cave was welcoming, with enough room to swim side by side. But as they ventured deeper, the vast open spaces gave way to increasingly narrow passages. It was here that the real challenge began. Manili led the way, his large rebreather strapped to his back. In the more spacious areas of the cave, it was an invaluable asset, but as the passages tightened, it became a cumbersome burden. He had to maneuver carefully, often twisting his body at awkward angles to fit through the narrow gaps. Every movement was a reminder of his back injury, a dull ache that he tried to push to the back of his mind. Bonin and Henry followed closely, their eyes frequently darting to Manili, watching for any sign of trouble. The cave was a maze of twists and turns, and the visibility was limited to the beam of their flashlights. They had to rely on their training and experience to navigate the complex network of tunnels. As they delved deeper, the passages became so tight that Manili had to remove his rebreather to squeeze through. It was a risky move, but there was no other way to progress. Bonin and Henry helped him, passing the equipment back and forth as they negotiated the cramped spaces. The strain was evident on Manili's face, a mix of concentration and pain. The deeper they went, the more the cave seemed to close in on them. The walls were so close in some places that they could feel the cold, rough surface against their shoulders. The water was icy, with a constant chill that seeped into their bones. Manili's breathing became more labored, each breath a struggle against the limitations of his body and the constraints of the environment. Despite the challenges, the trio pressed on. There was a sense of exhilaration mixed with apprehension as they explored further into the cave. They were in a world few had seen, a hidden realm of darkness and beauty. But with each meter they swam, the risks increased. The cave was unforgiving, and they were acutely aware that any mistake could have serious consequences. As they reached the most challenging part of the dive, the narrowest passages yet, Manili paused. He looked back at his friends, a silent question in his eyes. Bonin and Henry nodded in wordless agreement to continue. A bond of trust and a shared passion brought them together as a team. Together, they plunged into the heart of the cave, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Deep within the source of D-Dub's cave, the journey of John Manili and his friends took a sudden and challenging turn. The deeper they ventured, the more demanding the environment became. The cave, with its constricting passages and unpredictable contours, presented a relentless test of their skills and endurance. As they progressed, the passages grew tighter and the spaces more confined. Manili, with his large rebreather, found himself grappling with an increasingly difficult situation. The passages that were just wide enough for his friends became daunting obstacles for him. He had to squeeze through gaps that left scant room for movement, his equipment scraping against the cave walls. The real turning point came when they reached a particularly narrow section of the cave. Here, the passage was so tight that even without the rebreather, it was a struggle to get through. Manili, recognizing the gravity of the situation, made a critical decision. He decided to remove his rebreather to fit through the passage. This decision, made under the pressure of the challenging environment, was fraught with risk. The rebreather was his lifeline, a sophisticated system that allowed him to breathe underwater for extended periods. Without it, he was relying solely on the finite air supply in his backup tank. Manili's friends helped him detach the rebreather, and he proceeded to navigate the tight space with just his backup air supply. The removal of the rebreather, though necessary, introduced a new level of danger to their dive. Manili was now more vulnerable, with less time underwater and less margin for error. As he pushed through the narrow passage, the constraints of the environment became increasingly evident. Each movement had to be calculated and precise. There was no room for mistakes in these constricted spaces, where a single wrong move could spell disaster. The situation was made even more challenging by Manili's back injury. The physical strain of maneuvering through the tight spaces, coupled with the need to handle his equipment carefully, put additional stress on his body. His movements were hampered, and the pain from his injury became more pronounced. Manili persevered despite these challenges, thanks to his tenacity and the encouragement of his friends. They were a team, and they were committed to facing these challenges together. But as they continued, the risks increased, and the margin for error grew thinner. The cave, with its narrow passages and unforgiving environment, was testing them to their limits. The expedition in the source of D-Dub's cave had reached a critical juncture. John Manili, already navigating the cave without his rebreather, faced an unforeseen and dire situation. The air bottle, his only source of oxygen since he had removed his rebreather, suddenly detached. This accident plunged Manili into a perilous state, trapped deep within the cave without a reliable air supply. The detachment of the air bottle was sudden and unexpected. Manili, already taxed by the physical demands of the dive and the pain from his back injury, found himself in a desperate scramble. His movements, hampered by the tight confines of the cave, became frantic as he tried to retrieve the vital air bottle. But in the murky, confined waters, his efforts were met with increasing difficulty. John Bonin and Charles Reed Henry, realizing the gravity of the situation, rushed to Manili's aid. The camaraderie and trust that had bonded them were now their greatest assets in this crisis. They worked together, trying to reattach the air bottle, but the cave's tight spaces and the urgency of the situation worked against them. As precious minutes ticked away, Manili's situation grew more desperate. Cut off from his air supply, he began to experience the effects of hypoxia, a dangerous condition caused by insufficient oxygen reaching the body's tissues. His breathing became labored, his movement sluggish, and his judgment clouded. The cold, oppressive darkness of the cave only added to the mounting sense of panic. Bonin and Henry, despite their best efforts, could not rectify the situation quickly enough. They watched in horror as their friend, a seasoned diver and adventurer, struggled against the insurmountable odds. Manili's strength was fading. The lack of oxygen was taking its toll. In these harrowing moments, the cave, a silent witness to countless explorations, became the scene of a tragic struggle. Manili, isolated and struggling for air, faced the stark reality of his predicament. His body and mind, pushed to their limits, could no longer fight against the unrelenting grasp of hypoxia. As Manili's struggles slowly ceased, Bonin and Henry faced a heartbreaking reality. Their friend, who had embarked on this journey full of life and determination, had succumbed to the very elements he had sought to conquer. The cave, which had promised adventure and discovery, had claimed another soul in its cold, dark depths. The dive that began as an adventurous journey into the source of D-Dub's cave had taken a grave turn. After the harrowing incident with John Manili, John Bonin and Charles Reed Henry emerged from the cave's depths, their hearts heavy with a sense of dread. As they broke the surface, the absence of Manili was glaringly evident. The realization that their friend was still down there in the labyrinth of underwater passages hit them with the force of a tidal wave. Without hesitation, Bonin and Henry sprang into action. They knew that every second mattered in situations like these. Their immediate concern was to raise the alarm and initiate a rescue operation. They quickly informed the local authorities and the emergency services, detailing the situation with urgency. As the rescue team assembled, Bonin and Henry provided them with all the necessary information about the cave's layout and the specific challenges they had encountered. They were determined to do everything in their power to help bring their friend back. The rescue team, consisting of experienced divers and cave rescue specialists, moved swiftly. Time was of the essence, and they were well aware of the risks involved in such a rescue mission. Following the directions given by Bonin and Henry, they prepared themselves and entered the cave. The rescue operation was fraught with the same challenges that had confronted the trio earlier. The narrow passages, the cold and murky water, and the complex navigation required the utmost precision and caution. In the hopes of finding Manili alive, the rescuers continued to move forward. However, as they reached the location where Manili was last seen, a somber mood settled over the team. There, in the dim light of their torches, they found John Manili's lifeless body. The sight was a stark reminder of the perilous nature of cave diving, especially in such a demanding environment. Despite their extensive training and experience, the rescue team was met with a scenario that no diver ever wishes to face. They carefully retrieved Manili's body, navigating the treacherous return journey with a profound sense of loss. When Bonin and Henry saw the rescue team emerge with Manili, their worst fears were confirmed. The adventure they had embarked on together, filled with excitement and camaraderie, had ended in tragedy. The cave, which had promised a thrilling exploration, had instead become the scene of a poignant and painful loss. In the days following the tragic dive in the source of D-Dub's cave, a solemn mood enveloped the diving community. News of John Manili's passing spread, leaving a ripple of sadness and reflection among those who shared his passion for exploring the underwater world. Manili's friends, John Bonin and Charles Reed Henry, along with his family, grappled with the loss. They remembered Manili not just for the fateful dive, but for the vibrant, adventurous spirit he embodied. There were gatherings where stories were shared, laughter mixed with tears, recounting the many dives, the challenges overcome, and the unbreakable bonds formed beneath the water's surface. The close-knit diving community, which shares a passion for the ocean depths, came together to pay tribute to Manili. They spoke about the risks inherent in their sport, the need for respect for nature's power, and the importance of safety in the face of adventure. Manili's story became a poignant reminder of the fine line between pursuing one's passions and the unpredictability of the environments one seeks to explore.